Hi everyone, I have a very special guest with me, Craig DeWitt, who's the Senior Director of Product at Ripple. Craig, it's really great to have you today.
Tony, super happy to be here.
Craig, let's start with your background. Where are you from? What did you do before Ripple, and how did you end up working at Ripple?
Yeah, I grew up in East San Diego. So I was born in a place called La Mesa and grew up in a place called El Cajon. The way that I got connected to Ripple is I went to get an MBA at Stanford after getting radicalized at Berkeley for an undergrad, and a gentleman by the name of Chris Larson came to campus to talk about digital assets, XRP in particular, and what he was building at a company called Ripple Labs at the time. It was about 2014, and we do these brown bag lunch things at Stanford where somebody comes in and talks, and nobody actually came to this one, or very few people actually came to this one. And it was because at the time crypto assets were just so new in the space. So Chris talked about the vision of what was happening at Ripple. And, I'd come to Stanford hoping to find a company that was trying to really change the world and look at blue ocean opportunities. And up until that point, I'd seen a lot of dog walking apps within the Valley. Nothing wrong with those, but not dense in the universe. This was actually the only place that I found that I thought could fundamentally change the way that the world works. And after that, man, I was just sold. So started working in Ripple in early 2015.
Wow. So it sounds like your first exposure, if you can correct me if I'm wrong here, to crypto was XRP via Chris, or did you hear about Bitcoin before that?
Yeah, before I heard about XRP, I'd actually heard about Bitcoin, and I played around with it a little bit. Part of when I mentioned the radicalization at Berkeley, I'm kind of a student of the financial crisis in 2008, around the time that I was going through my undergrad there. And I went to work at Bloomberg in 2010, and kind of the intersection of Berkeley and Bloomberg, of learning about how financial industry works. This new thing emerged onto the scene where these kind of existential questions and problems were potentially being solved by technology. And I just remember being so enamored with Bitcoin, but I had no idea how to get involved at all. It was just this amorphous, anonymous thing with some awesome creator out there,
sure,
like a superhero, but I didn't know how to get involved. XRP is really the first time that I found an enterprise designed to build an excellent use case around the use of digital assets. And that's really the first time that I understood that there's actually careers in digital assets. So I'd heard about Bitcoin before, but XRP is the first one that I'd say really stole my heart.
Yeah, I mean, to your point of employment or jobs within the industry, it's grown so much, and we've seen Ripple as a company grow so much. And now there's so many other companies that are going live, and it's become such a flourishing industry now. So I do have to ask, what do you hold in your crypto portfolio, if you can divulge that? You mentioned Bitcoin. I'm assuming you have some XRP, but just curious about, what do you have in your portfolio?
Yeah, great question. Personally, one of the things that I love about digital assets is the anonymous nature of digital assets. So I'll tell you what, Tony, how about I talk about projects that I really like? Projects that I really like. Bitcoin, I think, is an incredible thing. So Bitcoin is something that is at the top of my list. I also think Ethereum and the ideas of creating a ecosystem of essentially like programmable money is really, really cool. And then, I actually do probably get some flack for this one. I have a lot of respect for what's being built at Bitcoin Cash as well. And I think, the way that I'm drawn to projects or digital assets are really ones that are trying to build ecosystems that have real utility and real usage. And I have to say, like, when you look at the peer-to-peer use cases of Bitcoin Cash, that's been kind of cool to see that ecosystem emerge. Last piece that I mentioned that I'm, really into is the stuff that the Brave browser is doing.
Oh yeah.
Really, really cool to see the adoption there, as a way of people kind of getting their feet wet in the crypto space. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Now, the one that I will say is I think that all those have awesome opportunities and awesome potential for growth. The one digital asset that I've seen that is not just potential, but is actually making a profound impact on people's lives, even as we speak, through payments, is XRP. So if there's one project that I am super bullish on, believe it or not, it's XRP.
Now, you've been doing some great things kind of on your own, not with Ripple per se, but built around XRP. And that's XSongs and Payburner. So I want to go deep here on these projects that you've been working on because I find them very interesting and they're essentially helping to build adoption of XRP in their own way. So can you give us an overview of what is XSongs? What's the platform about and how folks can leverage it?
Yeah, a great question. XSongs is really, really simple. It is a platform for buying and selling music with a peer-to-peer payments piece underneath it. So one of the reasons why I started XSongs is because I see a lot of really cool, you call them blockchain projects. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the times they miss the forest for the trees in that they get really deep in this technology and they make things super complicated from a user perspective. So XSongs is really, really simple. It's just allowing people to sell their music for 100% of the proceeds. And the only way that I could create a system where the users got 100% of the proceeds of their song was to use a peer-to-peer payment mechanism. And I think XRP is the best digital asset to do that. So, nothing really crazy blockchain-y about it. It's using, Amazon Web Services as a database for the songs, and we host that. But you can buy them and essentially unlock those by sending XRP to the address of the musician who put them on there. It's kind of a cool thing.
Got it. So, for example, we could have Kanye come on board and say, "Hey, I'm going to release this new song. I'm going to put it on XSongs," and I, as a user, can go purchase that, based on the price that he puts it at, and pay with XRP, and it would be that simple, and download it.
Yeah, that's it. And he receives the funds. He receives the funds directly. Now it's interesting you use Kanye because I think of these mega artists similar in the way that you can think of some of the mega institutions in the world that in many ways they're overserved. So I'm sure that Kanye has a multitude of ways where he could get paid for his art, and he has the negotiating power to leverage his star power to do that. Really, I think the people who get kind of screwed in the music industry are your smaller artists, are the indie artists who don't really have good opportunities to sell their music. And when they do, it's really egregious, the kind of fees that they have to pay, in many cases upwards of 20%. So really targeting the little guy on this one. But I'm open for personal freedoms. If Kanye wants to put his stuff on the XSongs, he can do so.
Well, I'm thinking about the decentralized nature of where we're headed, right? And the ecosystems are being built. Could some artists say, I'm tired of all my fees getting cut and going through their music labels, and we've already seen a lot of folks just throw their stuff on SoundCloud and get visibility from that. What if they start selling directly, right? Hey, we don't know. That could be something down the line. Some artists say, I'm tired of it, and I'm going to put it on XSongs and get the proceeds directly.
You're 100% right. And then it doesn't take that much to realize that same scenario you're talking about doesn't just apply to music. That applies to digital art. That applies to code. That applies to games. That applies to applications. And there are essentially quasi monopolies that own the distribution of those things, and they're able to charge rent because of it. So the place where you can really affect that is, and the way that they charge the rent is by owning the payment experience. The decentralized payment experience, in my mind, is crucial to creating that access. Applications can be built on top of it, and XSongs is just an application built on top of that.
Got it. And I do want to ask, are you the one coding it, or I know it's your idea, it's your project, but are you doing the coding, or you have folks working with you, maybe at Ripple or outside of Ripple?
Yeah, I am lucky to work at Ripple with a bunch of just incredible people who know how to code regular applications as well as blockchain-based payment applications. I work with this individual named Chris Oppler at Ripple, absolute genius, who builds most of the infrastructure.
Very cool. So how does XSongs make money? If you guys, it seems like all the proceeds are going to the artists. How are you guys making money at this point, or plan to monetize?
Yeah. I'm doing the exact opposite of making money with XSongs right now. So XSongs is totally financed by us. So we pay for it for the good of the artists. And this is kind of a philosophical decision where we figured that if you can build something of value, if you can build a multi-sided marketplace that has real traction, that the monetization efforts will follow in the future. So, we're not super concerned about the monetization piece right now. We do have plans to experiment with the business case, but the experimentation of the business case won't necessarily happen with XSongs. That'll most likely happen with what we think is the real innovation here, and that's the underlying payment capabilities that are part of Payburner.
Got it. Now, I'm curious if Coil fits into this in any way, given the micropayments movement that Coil is currently pushing with web monetization and so forth. Is Coil integrated, or is there plans to integrate Coil, or does it not make sense to have Coil integrated?
No, it absolutely does, and we love the guys at Coil. I think I must be. Coil should do like who's been the customer the longest there. I must be like a top 5. I was doing beta like way before anything, so I've kept up my Coil subscription. The place where we see Coil fitting in isn't necessarily in the purchase of individual songs, but the amazing aspect of their technology of streaming payments.
Right.
So we see a future where instead of actually purchasing songs from artists, you can stream music and then pay directly on a streaming basis to the artist. A lot more code required to make that an excellent experience. Buying an MP4 is a lot easier. But yeah, something that we plan to do, especially after we start rolling out the Payburner application features that we're excited about.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, sometimes I may not want to download it, but hey, I can stream it and listen to it, as majority of people are, for the most part, doing a lot of streaming devices and applications out there. So question around some stuff I've read directly from Ripple and the Spring Initiative, where Scooter Braun's SB projects was Spring funded, if I'm not mistaken. Any connection there? Any plans to introduce that to Scooter and get Bieber and Ariana Grande music on there? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. So nothing right now with Scooter Braun. Now, one of the cool things is that just at Ripple and the investments that Ripple made and the fact that Ripple's been around for a long time is that the depth of connections in not just this industry, but any industry, I think is really bar none for where Ripple is. Of course, in the financial industry, but it extends beyond that. So I think this is just a good idea and another just viewpoint as to when we're kind of ready to push that button, that those opportunities exist. Until I go to somebody like Scooter, though, I would definitely want to have my ducks in a row in terms of that business model. And as you know, I'm not there. I'm not quite there yet with it.
Got it. I love the idea, and the fact that you're planning to add the streaming feature, I think will really be cool and add the other alternative. But very cool. And I'm curious, is Ripple planning to eventually, let's say this project gets to a certain point, maybe is it kind of like Google, where the idea that you made at the company belongs to Ripple and they're going to buy it over from you or whatever it is and then amplify it? I'm just curious about that, if it's on their radar in that way.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that, believe it or not, I actually haven't put too much thought into. One thing that I'll tell you about, and this is just another cool thing about working at a company like Ripple, we do this thing on Friday where we do a Friday demos. And sometimes we have people from outside the company, but usually it's people within the company who come in and they demo the applications and, the ecosystems that they're building that are separate from what that Ripple is building in terms of financial institutions. And so everybody's aware of these different apps that not just I'm building, but other people are building. And everybody's super supportive in terms of really driving the utility of this digital asset in things not even related to financial payments.
Got it. Well, I'm definitely interested in this project, and I definitely want to see where things progress, especially to your point of the connections that Ripple has. Now, let's jump into Payburner Wallet. Obviously a wallet. Curious what makes it different, how does it work, and any new developments around it as well.
Yeah. So, Payburner got started because we had this idea for XSongs, and then we realized that there wasn't actually a great ecosystem for the use of individuals to do peer-to-peer payments using XRP. It was interesting to see in the initial versions of XSongs, the vast majority of payments were coming from digital asset exchanges. People were buying music from digital asset exchanges. The way we found that is that people were buying songs for 20 XRP, which was the weirdest thing. When it could be a fraction of that. Why? It was just the weirdest thing. Well, it turns out that's the exchange withdrawal for a lot of these exchanges, that you can only withdraw a minimum of that. And then it kind of dawned on us that actually there hasn't been excellent wallet infrastructure that makes things really easy for customers customers of Payburner or customers of XSongs to actually leverage XRP. And then it dawned on us a crucial piece of building XSongs in any ecosystem is going to be a digital asset wallet. And so it kind of stemmed from the fact that we needed it because our customers needed to be able to make these payments.
Sure.
Payburner, the idea of Payburner is really just a simple place for someone to have not a hot wallet, but like a burner wallet. So this is, a hyper hot wallet that you can use to do one-click purchases online. And the initial idea was that it was a web page, and we've now found that there's a better way to do that. And the better way to do that is a browser plugin native to your browser that allows you to configure, and then as you visit websites, they're enabled with Payburner to make purchases.
Got it. So it functions, as you mentioned, as a add-on or a plugin for web browser. Is it available in Google Chrome, all browsers, or only certain ones at this point?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're looking to launch. That the first browser that we launch in will be Google Chrome. It'll allow you to download that and then make instantaneous one-click purchases using the XRP balances that you hold within that wallet. We haven't announced this yet, but that is something that we'll be announcing in a couple weeks, which I'm really excited about. And the other thing that I'm really excited about is we're working really hard on some integrations that'll make it easy, not just for purchasers, but receivers and people who are running their own e-commerce businesses to accept that as part of their payment flow. So really think of it as kind of taking out that awesome payment experience that we have in XSongs and exposing that for people who want to sell things that, are beyond music.
Very cool. And for the wallet, is there a minimum and is there a maximum as far as XRP that needs to be in there, or can be, I should say, for the maximum?
Yeah, so it's a non-custodial wallet, meaning that there's no say that Payburner, there's no say that I have, no corporation, government, individual can control the amount of XRP that you have in that wallet. The only caveat is, and this is more of an aspect of the XRP ledger, is that there are 20 XRP required to create a new XRP account that is directly on the ledger. I think of that as, that is just held by the XRP ledger. That doesn't go to an individual or anything like that.
Right.
That's kind of the cost of having that complete freedom over that wallet.
Got it. So you essentially just have to have 20 in there at a given time to use the functionality of the wallet.
That's exactly right.
Got it. What are some of the security measures in place? And I understand that, obviously some of this, you may not be able to communicate this is the coding or the setup of it, but I'm curious from the safety standpoint, because I'm sure that's a question people may have. And if you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so this is kind of crucial to the founding of Payburner and even the name of calling it a burner wallet. And what I found was, if you're using a Ledger Nano, for example, so like a hardware device that is separate from your computer, excellent security there. Mm-hmm. The problem is you got to go to your safe, you got to pull out the Ledger Nano, you got to type in the PIN, you got to plug it into your computer, and then you got to bring up Ledger Live, and then you can send a payment, right? That's not great for one-click purchases. Right. So where we have really skewed towards is very similar to how MetaMask runs their application, really skewed towards the usability of being able to make these payments easy. So we leverage the security within the browser and the way that they're able to ring face the databases of the plugins that are leveraged. Mm-hmm. But really the priority here, one, make sure that it is secure to a level, though, that we don't destroy the customer experience of being able to do this one-click payments.
Got it. I love it. I love the idea of it. To your point, there wasn't anything before that could easily allow these payments. We would have to go into something and send it to here and all of that. But it sounds like you can have a balance within that Payburner wallet and do your thing. Go to XSongs, make a payment, download your music. As others folks adopt the Payburner setup. Pay for other things as well, right? I'm assuming you guys are looking to partner with other folks and maybe e-commerce at some point. Is that something maybe down the line? Yeah,
it's when you look at the distribution of websites today, you have a vast majority of websites that are really run on WordPress.
Yeah.
So one thing that we're really excited about is by building a plugin to WordPress, you could make it very easy for people who want to receive XRP and payment for goods to have that plugin. And then you have a built-in ecosystem of people who are easily able to purchase that using the Payburner plugin that they have in their browser. And so the way that we're approaching this is really one of a two-sided market. one where you have sellers and one that you have buyers. And we're going to go actively cultivate the ecosystems on both sides to make a better experience for both parties.
Awesome. I love it. And I definitely need to test it out myself. And I wanted to definitely learn, about the whole setup first. And I'll probably do a tutorial video for folks and have my Payburner wallet go buy a song from XSongs. And
Awesome.
yeah, I'll definitely set up something like that. That's very cool. So I want to switch gears a bit and get your thoughts on things that impact the entire market, not just Ripple and XRP, but U.S. crypto regulations. We've seen Donald Trump tweet anti-Bitcoin sentiments. Steve Mnuchin say regulations are coming this year. I don't know if they got sidetracked with the pandemic and all the things that have been going on. But what are your thoughts and maybe the point of view from the folks at Ripple? It almost seems like things are moving very slowly, and maybe XRP needs some regulations along with other cryptos and digital assets to flourish a bit more for the market itself to grow. Hey, can I get your thoughts around that?
Yeah. Well, my thoughts are there's a great statement that eventually the U.S. gets things right. Might not be the first, the second, try, but eventually the U.S. does get things right. And I have a lot of confidence in the U.S. ability to set good regulations on innovative things like digital assets. It might take time though. And I think a lot of people forget that the United States, I think it was 1984, was one vote away from banning the VCR. And I don't think people know that, super dangerous technology, that VCR, and people being able to record videos from home. It wasn't banned though, and eventually there was content and laws that were created to foster that ecosystem where the United States was able to foster. So in terms of timing things, I don't think anybody can time the market. I think it's very hard to time the market and probably even harder to time regulations. But there's just a lot of confidence that with the work going in from the entire ecosystem, that they will get it right, and the United States will be able to successfully innovate.
Yeah, and I've noticed, I think it's fairly public news, a lot of companies, Coinbase, I think even Ripple, have been lobbying and talking to DC politicians, congressmen, congresswomen, and all of that to try to get things going. And I do see more and more of folks getting on board. I wish more would. But yeah, it has been slow, and I wish things would move faster. I think a lot of people in the community are like, oh, come on, where is it, right? We're all anxious to see things grow, and I know folks are
completely
looking at the value of their portfolio and all of that good stuff, but it is what it is at this point, and we got to be patient.
Yeah, that's completely right. The way that I like to think about this, just having been at Ripple for 5 years. 5 years ago, if you would have asked me, would the market be where it is today? Absolutely not, right? Absolutely not. The amount of growth that we have done over a 5-year period is incredibly amazing in digital assets broadly. So I think it's easy to get impatient right now, but when you kind of have the ability of looking at a longer time horizon, we're fundamentally talking about making the world a better place and making a significant dent in the universe with the types of applications we're talking about. Not an overnight thing. And it's not an overnight thing because it is so impactful. So I try to keep that in my mind when I get impatient myself.
Got it. So I did want to talk about CBDCs along the lines of crypto regulations and what the governments are doing. It seems that cryptocurrencies and digital assets have caused a disruption, and now the central banks are all scrambling to build their central bank digital currencies. So I want to get your thoughts on that, and as well as Libra, with other folks, social network, Facebook trying to build their own digital currency, so to speak. What are your thoughts around that, and do you see that being beneficial for XRP?
Yeah, the central bank issued coins are really, really interesting. And I like to talk about this because a lot of my work is with financial institutions or the commercial banks who are the customers of the central banks who are looking at issuing these coins. I think the thing to remember is that central banks really see the commercial banks as their customers when it comes down to the banking infrastructure. And one thing that I think gets lost a lot when people are talking about the central bank issued coins is that if the central banks wanted to do that today, they could do that very easily, and they would not need blockchain technology to do that. You're essentially you could run a centralized ledger just like a PayPal that the central bank does. Sure. The reason that they'll hesitate to do that though is because that is going to substantially cut into the market share of the commercial banks, and these value-added, innovative services that the commercial banks can offer that a central bank can. So it's hard for me to see those being leveraged on a retail basis. And if so, it's hard for me to see why that would actually be a blockchain-based technology. That's on the CBDs.
Got it. And what do you think about Libra and what Facebook is trying to do?
Yeah. So I think one thing that happens in the space is people like to attack things because of kind of this tribal warfare that we've fallen into.
Yeah.
And I think the thing to remember is that we are so early innings in digital assets, so early innings in digital assets, that just standard new industry, the goal is to expand the pie and not fight over the scraps of market share. So, I am super excited about any new interest that brings anything into this ecosystem that, draws use case and draws attention away. And, I think Libra has done that in a big way, and it's opened a lot of people's eyes and got a lot of financial interest in not just Libra, but the wider ecosystem. So I think, the rising tide kind of lifts all boats, and the more entrants, the better. The water's fine. Let's do 1,000x growth of the industry rather than 5x growth of market share. Those are my personal views.
Personally going to agree with that. I see Libra, even though I wouldn't necessarily want to use it or plan to use it or anything, that it really put, I think, cryptocurrencies, digital assets on the radar. It got so much attention, so much dialogue happening. So to your point, the tide that lifts all boats. And I think with that in place, it's also going to help people to understand how cryptocurrencies and digital assets work, because there's still a large part of the population haven't really dived into it. They don't care about it, but eventually it's going to become the norm, and they're going to adopt it in some way.
That's right.
Yeah. Great. So I did want to ask about XRP. Obviously, you're doing your thing with XSongs and Payburner. Ripple, obviously, the large use case of being a bridge asset, right? A bridge currency. Where do you see XRP adoption, in the next few years and growing? And do you see other use cases? And definitely want to get your point of view, being on the side of the building side of things and pushing for growth.
Yeah. So what I see happening is you're going to get some really good infrastructure when it comes down to easily making payments. And that's kind of a meta idea. And I think that's sometimes a lot of people miss the fact that payments by itself really isn't a use case. It's an enabler of new use cases. So the things that I see taking place in the short term are it's going to get a lot easier, not just for institutions to use that, but it's going to get easier for developers to build payment applications or applications that leverage payments, like Payburner allows things like XSongs. So I continue to see XRP being used as a payment mechanism, but the number of verticals being built on that are going to multiply as it becomes easier to do so. It's kind of like in the early days of the internet, Tim Berners-Lee probably didn't think Tinder was going to come out there, but he knew that there was going to be a lot of new applications built on top of it. And so I do see a myriad of these new applications that are still doing payments, but brand new business opportunities that allow peer-to-peer payments of a cross-border basis that are, direct and just built by developers in their, garages.
Very cool. So Craig, that kind of wraps up my questions, but if you had anything else you wanted to share or can give us a hint on, I know you mentioned the Payburner plugin coming soon in a few weeks. Anything else you want to share with us before we wrap it up?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks a lot for having somebody at my level on. I know you get some giants on the show, so I'm glad to show the other side of it as well. And last thing I'll say is that I look forward to kind of launching this personal project of Payburner with the plugin, and I'll send you over some invitations so you don't have to burn that 20. I'll get you set up with that myself.
Perfect, Craig. I love it. I love the projects you're working on, and we'll definitely love to have you back on as things progress on your end.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.